Hello and welcome to episode 216 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week, reduced emissions in the United States from 2019 to 2022 resulted in $250 billion in savings in climate and health benefits. It would have been more if Taco Bell went out of business, Brian.
Vermont becomes the first U.S. state to require big oil to pay for climate damages. Furthermore, the official state motto, which was Freedom and Unity, has been changed to Show Me the Money.
There's a downside to cleaning up air pollution, believe it or not. Turns out smog slows the heating of the ocean. Is there anything smog can't do, Brian?
Oh, reminds me of my favorite singer, the Golden Smog. As the planet warms up, cities around the world have created a new job, Chief Heat Officer. Heat mitigation measures include opening cooling centers, installing air conditioning in public housing, and the outright ban of Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
All that and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show. Also this week, Mexico elects a climate scientist as president. And Nissan, the company with two sorta EVs, says it will stop developing internal combustion engines. The program to give out free air conditioners to address climate change is renewed and expanded. And we have more climate legal news. Look out, big oil.
Yeah, so I'm going to be off on a road trip next week. So we're actually going to take a week off, just 1 week, but it is the summer. So we do like to try and enjoy ourselves a little.
Oh, yes.
I know you like to complain about the weather and how we don't seem to have any nice days in the summer anymore. I'm just sort of wondering, you should keep track of the number of...
I would, but I'm a busy man and I'm not as efficient as I used to be. I will say the sky is blue. It's not covered in smoke. We're not closing the windows. The only thing is I wish my swimming pool, because it is a relief from gravity, short of building a spaceship, this is my easiest way to, fight gravity is to go into the pool, and it's not available yet. Because it is solar heated with thermal solar, I need warm weather, and it looks like it's coming, and the government weather office says that we're going to have a hot summer. So we'll see. We'll see how much air conditioning I have to use, and it might be, really good for you with your new heat pump air conditioning.
Yeah. Which is working again, by the way. I had my heat pump guys here, and everything seems to be running great. I had some issues, but I think that they're solved. But yeah, a hot summer could also mean more forest fire smoke as well. This is the thing that's been ruining our summers for the last couple here on the prairies. So we've had, a handful of a handful of nice days so far. And, hopefully that continues.
Some people hate hot weather, so it's actually quite pleasant. There's probably a lot of people who, we had this massive garage sale on the weekend. And it turns out my wife is a hoarder. And I kind of knew that, but I never really knew the extent of it. Like, it was shocking. She saved everything that we've ever had, ever, and squished it into a shed. And it's not only that, it's more than that, because people have given us stuff for kids. Yeah. So it's more than we've actually used. And we had more clothes than Walmart, than all the Walmarts, I think. Yeah, so she did this garage sale, and I helped her as best I could, and it wasn't very much because I was exhausted. And she just went night and day, nonstop, constantly putting clothes back. We didn't even have time to put everything out because, once that first person comes, it was nonstop. Like, there was just always people there. And we had a neighborhood garage sale. So the whole sort of the subdivision community association advertised it. So there was like 22 of them around. And, the guy a little beyond across the street put a sign right in front of our house for his garage sale. It kind of pissed us off. My next door neighbor didn't like people parking in front of her house. So she put garbage cans out, and then people parked in their driveway, in front of her driveway. And she got mad. And you get to learn about your neighbors. And I have a recycling story because we had this horse that a young kid would sit on. My daughter
like
named
a hobby horse.
my daughter named him Charlie the horse, Charlie horse. And he's been a staple in the family. We haven't been able to get rid of him. I kept threatening to send him to a farm upstate and
glue factory, perhaps.
Perhaps. And I mean, I didn't have any options of getting rid of him. I'd have to literally saw off his legs and head. And that was so morbid to me because, it turns out the kids really, they were taking pictures with him. They didn't want to see him go. But he was ripped. My daughter ripped the top of him open so there was stuffing, and she also trimmed his hair for some reason.
So, but just to be clear, you had to chop it up in order to fit it in the garbage can?
I would have had to have chopped it up to fit it into the garbage can. Yes, because I would take it to the dump, and that would be a special trip. It would cost me money just to deposit.
Would have been the scene from The Godfather.
Sure, and that's what my partner suggested as I use the head as a joke. But then how many times can I, sneak up on somebody sleeping? So we did manage. I wanted to recycle them because I thought, if somebody could sew, we can't sew, but if you could sew. So I put them up on Facebook, the marketplace, which I never use. I sold a minivan there once, and I finally got a bite, but they said, my daughter will pick it up tomorrow. And I said, well, fine, we'll drop it off after. And they said, sure. So we did. We dropped it off and I recycled my horse. And that's a good thing. However, we also dropped off a Nissan Leaf full of stuff weighted down to the ground at a place called Value Village, which is a used clothing store that donates to charity, if I'm not mistaken. They also charge a lot for their stuff.
Yeah, I think they don't actually donate to charity anymore. But
who gets the money then? Because they're charging a fortune. They charge more than what the things are worth at the store sometimes.
I mean, somebody checked that for us, but we've been donating to the Salvation Army instead.
Well, yeah, there's problems with the Salvation Army too,
Well, yeah, there's no good solution, but it's better than the dump.
It is better than the dump. Although a lot of their stuff goes to the dump because they can't sell it. And, we had all kinds of books. My wife had books in the shed that she was going to read one day. And this is a person who has 10 books out from the library at any time and can't possibly touch all of those before they're overdue. And I don't know what she's thinking, but yeah, we have a lot of crap. And I found out that one of my neighbors, this old gentleman who was illiterate, because he always had constant sales in his driveway of stuff. And he spelled things wrong. Not even like a kid would spell things wrong, but just somebody who never had an education. Perhaps he grew up on a farm and then just, I don't know how he was illiterate, but he was illiterate and he's dead. And I found out that he was dead. But his wife died first. They were avid walkers in the neighborhood. But his wife died during COVID. And at the funeral, he got COVID and died. So it's just...
Yikes.
A tragic situation. And, one time he recycled one of my lawnmowers and I didn't work. It was a gas lawnmower and I was getting rid of it. And he offered us $20 instead of free. And then he fixed it up and sold it for $60 or something because he was a small engine repair guy. But yeah, we had a lot of weird neighbors around here. And I joined the Facebook group for the neighborhood. And, there's a divorcee who's moved in. So you get all the gossip. Well, she said it herself. It wasn't, but there's constantly videos of people, trying to open car doors at night, but my doorbell has yet to capture such things. In fact, we left all of our crap out in the yard all night. Nobody was interested, but what are you going to do? That's my recycling story. And thank God it's over. We're never doing it again, Brian. Never again. Ever.
Yes. Well, I've actually been working with our friend Spiros. We spent 4 days working on my house, organizing it and getting rid of stuff. And so I've got about 6 boxes of books ready to go to the big book sale. That's our local charity book sale.
Where's that?
Those are stacked by the door. But it took us 4 days to get our basement into some semblance of order. The bomb shelter's actually kind of tidy now. Now, there's still a whole bunch of boxes that we have to sort through. And I'm trying to archive all of my film materials over the years for the films I've made, donate those to the Sask archives. So, it was sort of like pre-sorting. We spent 4 days pre-sorting, and now we have a bunch of boxes that I still kind of have to go through.
Wow. It's just a lot of work. I mean, it's a first world problem, but my God, people accumulate a lot of stuff. If you drive by open garage doors in my neighborhood, their garages are all chock full to the limit. There's no cars in there.
Yeah, hardly anyone around here uses their garages for cars. It's all just to store their junk.
And you'd think they would because it's winter. We have a cold climate, but I was driving by the way, on the way to Valley Village, I drove by the former Sears warehouse building. It had a parking lot full of cars, 2 EV6s and 1 Hyundai Ioniq 5. I don't know whose lot it is. It doesn't say. Maybe it's the Kia Hyundai lot, and they've actually got stock of these cars.
Yeah, it's probably an auxiliary car lot for them or something, yeah.
But it's good to see EVs are available, that maybe you don't have to wait, a year to get one these days.
Yeah, it's starting to happen, and whether there is actually, I think, some stock. All right, so moving along from Bloomberg. This is a great article. Chief heat officers are developing a global playbook for deadly temperatures. And so, as we all know, climate change is giving us hotter weather, hotter summers. And so, from the article here, since the first chief heat officer was appointed in Miami-Dade County in 2021, the network established with the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center has now expanded to Athens, Melbourne, Dhaka North in Bangladesh, and Freetown in Sierra Leone. So all of these cities now have chief heat officers with the help of this foundation. And, we all just kind of have to rethink how we deal with heat, because globally as an average, maybe it's only 1 degree warmer across the globe. But as we know, we're just having more extreme weather events. And obviously heat has contributed to a lot of deaths over the last few years as, the peak temperatures get higher. So there's some quotes here from these chief heat officers and some of the things that they've learned and what they're doing. So the first is Jane Gilbert from Miami-Dade. When I first started, there were people like, why do we need a chief heat officer? Miami, we know the heat. We know how to handle it. And it's true, we're more acclimatized to heat than people in Boston State. But still, when we get even small increases in our heat index, it can make people more vulnerable. We are also projected to have the highest increase of dangerously high heat indexes of any other county in the U.S. So the planet's not warming equally, it's warming more.
That's right.
In certain places.
In Canada, the northern Canada is one, but they're also screwed because the oceans are rising. So Miami is really... You'd think they would be voting for climate change address.
You would think.
Mitigation.
So continuing on, hospitalizations by zip code in Miami-Dade County were looked at, and there were correlating factors in those high zip codes. First thing, there was a huge disparity. Some zip codes had 4 or 5 times the rates of ER visits and hospitalizations than other zip codes. And the correlating factors are high poverty rates, high land surface temperatures or urban heat islands, a high percentage of outdoor workers, particularly in South Dade, and a high percentage of households with children. So you can look at the data and figure out where the problems are, and then hopefully address them. So it continues, we installed 1,700 efficient AC units in public housing that were under the county's care prior to last summer. So that was life-saving for those people. We've really increased our tree planting. We went from planting about 7,500 a year to 10,000 to last year over 16,000 trees, and we gave away an additional over 10,000 trees to homeowners. All Florida-friendly or native trees are really marketing to areas that need it the most. We began inventorying our trees so that we can count them as infrastructure that they are, because they are infrastructure, and they not only mitigate heat, but they also absorb stormwater, and they provide so many other ecosystem benefits to our neighborhoods. So that was Jane Gilbert in Miami-Dade. Yeah, trees are infrastructure. It's something we don't necessarily think about, but absolutely, they have they're a factor in any environment they're in.
There's the picture of the story has a truck going through Bangladesh, spraying misting water, like you would see at an amusement park or something, just driving down the road and people are following it. Give me some. It's crazy what's going on. And, people, I saw a story the other day about workers, if you're a carpenter working on a house that's getting built and it's bloody hot, you can succumb to heat exhaustion. You can have serious health effects. And that's one reason, people actually sometimes die from stuff like that. And it's an issue. Like there's a lot of jobs that are not air conditioned.
Yeah, outdoor workers for sure. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. This is from the heat officer in Dhaka North in Bangladesh. Nobody really understood the impact of cutting down hundreds of massive trees. Again, with the trees acted as mini cooling stations that acted like heat mitigators and air pollution mitigators. The people who grew and developed the city, they didn't have any of this in their plan. And way back in the day, why would you? Now, after 2 or 3 decades, this is now becoming really highlighted in these conversations. The solutions are coming. They're a little too late, but I'm still grateful that they're coming. You have so many people here in Bangladesh who don't even get access to a steady supply of electricity. They don't have access to electric fans or ceiling fans. And we know terrible, terrible heat waves in that part of the world.
Yeah. Well, fans, I can't imagine living without a fan in that sort of, like, I find it bad enough here, and it's really not that bad compared to most places that get hot. So, yeah, it's, and, the older you are, the more delicate your health is, the harder it's going to hit you. And that is, they have to count, unusual counts of deaths during heat waves, and they come up with numbers of how the heat wave has affected it, premature deaths, particularly.
But yeah, the very basics, misting some water on yourself and having a fan can be absolutely life-saving. So, and the final heat officer I'm going to quote from here, this is the one from Athens. Last year, we had 7 cool centers. They are air-conditioned rooms that all people can go to. We have combined the Help at Home Plus programs that we have for vulnerable populations. We have social workers going to houses to check if people are okay. And we also used a program in order to take those people, if they wanted, to the cool centers. So you really have to reach out, because a lot of people are probably not thinking that they're going to die in their apartments, because it hasn't happened to them yet.
That's right.
So you got to be proactive. Heat is a silent killer. You cannot see the damage that it can do. That's why awareness is so important. That's why we need to be prepared before we leave in the morning to go to work. Dress properly, not heavily. Carry water with us. Choose a cool route to go home. The heat officer from Athens.
I remember in my small house, our first house, we had a very hot summer where the humidity was like record levels, and there was no evaporation from your skin because it had nowhere to go. The air was so moist for a few days. And I had a little window air conditioner in our master bedroom, and we just went in there, and it felt like a fridge compared to everywhere else. And it was such a relief. And then you could, bring your body temperature down, and then you can continue your day. And then we also did that with our swimming pool, because we had the same swimming pool we now have set up here, a steel above ground pool. And once you get in there, you get your life back, and then you can go do some chores or something for an hour or 2, and then you overheat and you jump back in the pool. And yeah, that's how it worked for us. But yeah,
your body is like a heat storage device.
I think I remember being in apartments as a younger man and just sort of laying in the bathtub saying, please God help me. And, or just having frequent showers, or, like every 20 minutes or something, and then, little spray guns, misting yourself. It's a serious problem. And we're going to talk more about that a bit later. The increasing use of renewable energy in the United States has yielded billions of dollars of benefits. In fact, even just under $250 billion. This is from a new study that is talked about in The Guardian and other places. This is the key finding. In 2022, we estimated that wind and solar generation provided a total climate and health benefit of 14.3 cents per kilowatt hour of wind and 10 cents per kilowatt hour of solar. Now, you and I don't know what it's like everywhere. It varies. California is a lot more expensive, but we pay around 15 cents a kilowatt retail for our electricity. And they're saying that almost that whole 15 cents is covered by the health benefit of using renewables to give you that 14.3 cents and 10 cents for solar. That's amazing. That's pretty significant, because solar can be 2 or 3 cents, wholesale.
Yeah, so fewer people going to the hospital with health programs saves money in other areas, I guess.
So including only domestic air quality health benefits, the benefits were 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour for wind and 1.7 for solar. That's a significant chunk of the wholesale prices of those things just for health benefits. So, it's frustrating to think that people for climate change aren't doing it, but for health benefits alone, this is showing a dollar value for using renewables instead of coal and gas for electricity.
Well, there's that famous cartoon that always makes the rounds online, and it's something like, well, what if climate change is all a hoax and we improve the world for nothing?
Yes, that is so true. It is basically what's going on. It's just hard to quantify that stuff. And there are studies, dribbling out now that we can look at that and say, and they're getting better at that. This is a relatively new thing. So it does say in the story that they're changing the models. So in 2022, wind and solar generation helped reduce SO2 and NOx, nitrous oxides, emissions to prevent 1,200 to 1,600 premature mortalities in the United States. That's just from wind and solar. That's, that alone saved a lot of lives, and they're just getting started. It's probably going to save a lot more lives. $250 billion worth of value on that. And we're not doing hardly anything where you and I live here in Saskatchewan, Canada. It's frustrating, very frustrating to think that, because I want to save the planet to make it livable for human beings, but, air pollution, I don't have to deal with too much of that except for wildfire smoke, which is a relatively new thing for us to have to really address. But and I've got, I'm podcasting from my bedroom, and I've got the air purifier up here now, and because I like to have air coming in my window at night when it's cool, fresh air. But sometimes, and it's happened recently, the air has shifted or it's not windy enough. It's not like a good northwest wind. If it comes from the east or the east-southeast, then I get the refinery, which is a couple miles away. And we've learned on previous episodes that this is a very dangerous thing to breathe that air. Yeah. So I've got that coming on.
And it triggers your air purifier to come on.
Does. The little light turns from green to purple to red, and red is bad. I once took it outside when the oil refinery stunk and plugged it in, and boom, it turned red. So I know that it knows what the refinery is like. So it's not good. I wish the whole theme of the show is that it'd be a better world without combustion fuels, fossil fuels. We didn't burn
the clean
stuff.
Air benefits alone would be amazing. Okay, from The Guardian, we have more legal updates. We love to talk about legal challenges, people taking big oil to court. And this one is from Vermont, the state of Vermont. Have you ever been to Vermont, James?
I have not. Seen pictures, seen TV shows.
Yeah.
Bob Newhart used to live there, fictionally speaking.
Yeah, so forgive my ignorance of Vermont for our American listeners, but I had to look up on a map where it was. I didn't really know where it was.
Isn't it right next to Canada?
I knew in the general, no, I'd forgotten that it borders Canada, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that, Vermont. I mean, I'm sure you're underappreciated all the time. Why not be underappreciated here?
Yeah, well, that's why, again, I looked at Wikipedia, 643,000, that's the population of Vermont. So it's a pretty small state.
North Dakota size.
Yeah. It is the second least populated U.S. state ahead of Wyoming. Ah, you love Wyoming.
You certainly don't.
the vast expanses.
No. I've been. I hit a deer in Wyoming and had to deal with the police there. It was not a pleasant experience. I will not be on the good side of Wyoming. I don't think there's anyone listening in Wyoming. If there is, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Send us a note. We'd love to hear from you. But bad experiences in Wyoming.
Yeah. But anyway, so Vermont, sixth smallest state in area. Their capital, this is the least populous U.S. state capital, 8,000 people in their capital of Montpelier, which is crazy. Their economic activity, $40 billion in 2022, ranked last of the list of U.S. states and territories by GDP, 21st in GDP per capita. But the reason I bring all this up is that it's not a big powerhouse kind of state. And, they've had serious issues with climate change, including, massive sort of weather disasters. And so, they have passed a law. Vermont has become the first state to enact a law holding oil firms financially responsible for climate damages after the Republican governor, Phil Scott, allowed it to pass without his signature on late Thursday. So I guess the governor could have vetoed it. I think that's how that works in the U.S., but he allowed it to pass. So this is now passed. It's modeled after the Environmental Protection Agency's Superfund program. The Climate Superfund Act directs the state to charge major fossil fuel companies potentially billions of dollars to pay for climate impacts to which their emissions have contributed. It is expected to face legal challenges, of course, from the industry. So, under the legislation, Vermont officials have until January 2026 to assess the total costs to the state from greenhouse gases emitted between 1995 and 2024, including the impacts on public health. We just talked about that. Having things like bad air impacts public health. It's a greater cost to everybody. And how it's going to how it's affected biodiversity and economic development, and then it's going to use the federal data to determine how much to charge those individual polluters for their harms. So this was passed in the state legislature from Democrats, and some Republicans did support it as well. It goes on to say here in The Guardian, supporters hope the bill can serve as a model for the rest of the country as Maryland, Massachusetts, and New York are considering similar measures, as well as federal legislation is possibly in the works for that as well. Vermont is among the most quickly warming states in the U.S. As we said, some places warm faster than others. And
that surprises me. I'm really surprised by that.
Pummeled by climate disasters in recent years, last year, floods wreaked more than $1 billion in damages. In a note to the state secretary on Thursday, Scott said he understood the desire to seek funding to mitigate the effects of climate change that has hurt our state in so many ways. So, yeah, with a small population, trying to come up with $1 billion to cover the damage from flooding, that's not easy. And so, if the fossil fuel companies are responsible, then they should pay. Now, of course, they're going to challenge this. And their argument is that, well, these were perfectly legal activities. You're kind of making something retroactively illegal that, everybody participates in. Everyone's filling up their cars with gas. So yet to be seen if those challenges will have an effect.
Well, the more court cases, the better, because some of them are likely to proceed and be successful, and then that sort of sets precedent, and the whole house of cards starts to fall, is what I'm hoping to see in the whole legal fight. We have one going on in Saskatchewan here. Had an update the other day. It's a long, drawn-out process, though, but God, I hope it works, because, governments should be held accountable. The people who pollute should be held accountable, and who knows, the way the political winds are blowing, what's going to happen for a while. In British Columbia, Canada, there's a free air conditioner program that they started last year. We did mention it on the show, but it turns out they are going to vastly expand it and keep it going. This is because British Columbia is kind of like Washington State in that it's temperate climate. They're not used to heat, and a lot of people don't have air conditioners. Well, the elderly living in apartments, there was, they had that heat dome a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 years ago now, but it was terrible. A lot of people died, a lot of excess deaths, and they're trying to deal with that by giving out free air conditioners to people on low incomes, particularly, getting to the elderly and the vulnerable like that. So British Columbia is expected to have hotter than normal temperatures this June, for example, and air conditioner program in BC, the government there has tripled the funding, adding $20 million to provide free air conditioners. These are window air conditioners, by the way. And there's sometimes, landlords don't want to let you put them in. So there's laws to say, hey, you have to let them put them in. And, around 19,000 more to low-income households, launched in response to the 2021 heat dome, which is, 3 years ago. That's when half of Canada burned, and initially provided 6,000 there. So they're up to 19,000 now. It's income-based. The program is income-based, including one portable air conditioner unit and installation. So they will come by. That's nice because, if you're elderly, you probably can't mount that sucker on your window. It'll probably fall out and kill a cat or something. Air conditioners are crucial for vulnerable populations during extreme heat, and Environment Canada forecasts a warmer than normal summer here and in BC. So we'll see how that plays out. BC Heat Alert Response System issues warnings for extreme heat. Alerts may be sent to mobile devices now. Broadcasts like Amber Alerts, that's a new thing. We can, just in this short 4 years of our podcast, we can really see the world changing. That it's a nasty thing. Landlords, like I said, cannot ban air conditioning units without a valid reason. And there's supports for seniors, $6 million grant to improve air conditioning in long-term care. And you better have air conditioning in assisted living homes and long-term care. That would be horrible. But interesting that they're doing that. And where we live, we have hotter, drier summers, cold winters, but a lot of air conditioners around here, I think. Seems like everybody has one or should have one.
Okay, so moving on from electric, Nissan is going to stop development of internal combustion engines.
No.
So Nissan...
Really?
What? Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because if you think about it, they're always...
They have two EVs, Brian. One's the Leaf, which has hardly been updated since 2010. And the other is the Aria, which is not selling well because it's overpriced for what it is. And it's, how do we say we're set? We're going to stop. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, Nissan, of course, an early leader with the Nissan Leaf fully electric car, but yes, have fallen behind. But here's the thing. You keep using the engines that you've designed, they're always coming out with tweaks to car engines, and, the new model is going to be a little bit better, give you 5 more horsepower or whatever.
Well, that's what Toyota's saying. Toyota's saying now that they're going to tweak their engines and give you more fuel efficiency, so don't worry.
Yeah.
We're going to save the planet by burning just a touch less.
You could just keep using the same engines you've already designed. You just don't have to spend any more money on design of new engines, and that's what Nissan is saying. So, the 4-cylinder that they've got now, they can keep using that, for the next several years. There's been no genuine, huge improvements usually in these engines. There's sort of, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Sometimes you get a tweak with more horsepower, but then the fuel economy is worse. And then you get a tweak with more fuel economy, less horsepower.
Fuel economy standards have sort of forced them to since the Obama administration set those out. But what you see now is more aerodynamic cars. The SUVs are less boxy than they used to be. They're more sleek and things like that. But they try to squeeze everything they can out of them and make them lighter too. But really, why not just make an EV, you dummies?
Yeah. But I think it's a good way to save money so you can, fire your whole engineering department that was working on new engines and hopefully put that money somewhere else. So Nissan, they're trying to go all electric in Europe by 2030, maybe not as fast in other places of the world, but seems like a step in the right direction.
My neighbor's kid is 1 year behind my son at the U of S, University of Saskatchewan, in engineering. He's in mechanical engineering because he loves gas and diesel cars. And I know his dad feels that way too. Yeah. And they're very skeptical about EVs. Well, they have no idea. You're not going to have a career developing gas engines. That's not going to happen. Nope. I mean, even now, who's going to be doing it? You've got a few old timers still maybe working on it, but you're not going to be hiring new people. It's done.
Yeah. The gains to be made from any new designs are so small. It's not worth it.
Anyway, cleaning up air pollution. Cleaning up air pollution is heating the oceans, Brian. I know this sounds ridiculous. But we're talking about air pollution like smog that you can see in cities, that is fine particulate matter. This is from Yale Environment. New research indicates that the decline in smog particles from China's air cleanups caused the recent extreme heat waves in the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's from Yale. They're smarter than me because it's Yale. I mean, I'm not smarter than Yale. You're not smarter than Yale. It's Yale. Scientists are grappling with the fact that reducing such pollution, while essential for public health, we know that, is also heating the atmosphere. A large blob. This is a large area in the ocean from Alaska to California that warms up by 4 degrees Celsius, harms sea life.
That's the scientific term, is the blob.
The blob, not to be confused with The Blob Thing, a famous animated film by filmmaker Brian Stockton. First appeared in this blob in 2013, covering the area the size of Canada, and keeps returning. Most recently, last summer it returned. The Blob Returns, which didn't you have a sequel called The Blob Thing Returns?
The Revenge,
Revenge of the Blob Thing, sorry. I'm screwing up your film titles. It kills fish, it starves seabirds, it creates toxic algae, prevents salmon from returning to rivers, displaces sea lions, and forces whales into shipping lanes. And the new study suggests the blob is due to reduced air pollution in China, not just climate change, but reduced air pollution in China. Fewer smog particles or aerosols mean more sunlight reaches the ocean. So if you put these aerosols, which is what smog is, it deflects the sunlight and doesn't let it through to heat the ocean directly. So it's a global concern. Reduced aerosols worldwide could lead to more intense regional heat waves. This is a feedback loop that we did not see coming. This is a weird one. And the unexpected consequence, cleaning air pollution can worsen warming since aerosols previously helped cool the planet. This was true with contrails from airplanes, from jets.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, and from ships, because ships leave a trail as well. And they said reducing those is actually heating the planet. And actually, they can measure that stuff. So yeah, this changes in aerosol levels actually can disrupt weather patterns, causing more regional climate surprises. One of the weirdest stories I've read on this show.
Yeah. And sometimes one of the solutions people mention is, maybe we do need to do artificial cloud seeding to create more clouds, because that would create more shade and slow things down. And I guess, smog does the same thing as more clouds would do.
Well, that, people they're experimenting with that, but it's very controversial to use that approach. But at least you're not breathing anything bad. Oh, it's time to get going. It's time for the Lightning Round.
The Lightning Round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Bloomberg New Energy Finance is projecting that coal could disappear from European electricity generation in just 5 years.
2029.
Less than 1%, they think, by 2028, which is incredible, amazing. Especially when you consider the thinking that the Russian invasion of Ukraine caused more coal to be kept and used. Well, true to an extent, but for the most part, it also kicked up renewables and sped out the decline of coal, which is good news. Mexico, as I said earlier, welcomes its first woman president, Claudia Sheinbaum, a climate scientist, retired climate scientist, and former Mexico City mayor. She was quiet on climate mitigation when she was following the last guy who was a leftist, Donald Trump. I don't know how to picture that exactly, but he was a populist and kind of a jerk. But I was surprised, though, that he actually doubled the minimum wage. I mean, that's kind of crazy, especially for Mexico. So as mayor of Mexico City, she began electrifying the city's public bus fleet, and she set up a huge rooftop solar array on the city's main wholesale market. She expanded bike lanes, making permanent several kilometers of pandemic-era pop-up paths. And, remember those pop-up paths for temporary pedestrian and bike plastering the pandemic, one of the few good things about the pandemic. Among her published works are papers that examine how Mexico can make the energy transition from one that's based on fossil fuels to renewables. So that she has that knowledge and is thinking that way, but she hasn't really talked too much about what she's going to do in office.
Yeah, seems like good news, though.
Hyundai's U.S. EV sales were up 42% year on year in May, where the Ioniq 5 had its best month ever. So, I was critical of them for not making enough of those suckers because they're a great car. They charge really fast. I have you seen any critiques of the Ioniq 5? I haven't heard much negative things about it, even after all these years of it being on the market.
No, it seems good. Doesn't have a rear wiper. I think they're maybe going to, add a rear wiper, but no, it seems like a great car.
And that seems like something that could be addressed. Cars without rear wipers, be very suspect of them. Especially when there's snow where we live. Snow blows off your roof and covers, suddenly you can't see it all out there. Scotland has banned SUVs and cruise ship advertising so that you can't advertise an SUV in Scotland.
Wow.
Or a cruise ship, which is, pretty cool. You had a story once about cruise ships not being very environmental. It was very interesting.
Right. I was trying to figure out how to get to the UK without the carbon footprint of flight. And I looked into it. And of course, going on a cruise ship, like a 7-day cruise across the Atlantic is worse carbon footprint because it's, 7 days of massive diesel generators just burning around the clock.
And my dad served in World War II, and when he had a diary about going over on a ship, and he said normally it was 5 days, but they zigzagged. So it was, normally it's 4 days, but they zigzagged for defense, and it was 6 days. And he said there was thousands in there packed as sardines. And, he'd see somebody he knew but he wouldn't be able to get to them to talk to them the whole trip. And everybody was vomiting, and people were arrested for smoking on the deck and put in detention for 10 days. And
so basically like a Carnival Cruise Line.
Yeah, he criticized the food, too. I don't know what he was expecting. He's going off to war and expecting good cuisine or something.
An endless shrimp buffet.
Hey, that's what put Red Lobster out of business, is their endless shrimp buffet. People, apparently, there's a lot of Homer Simpsons of the world. BYD, the Chinese automaker, unveils a hybrid powertrain capable of 2,000 kilometers of range. That's 1,250 miles. Don't know why you need that. If you have a bladder that can go 2,000 kilometers, my hat's off to you. But, maybe I don't understand. It seems like overkill. Like even, gas is very efficient for having a lot of energy in it, but do you really want to carry around that much gas? BYD sells 331,817 new energy vehicles in May. That's the Chinese automaker has sold a third of a million vehicles that don't use gas or diesel. So overall in China, we're at 44% plug-in vehicle market share. And that's according to the April 2024. So China's having a big year when it comes to EV adoption.
Yeah, and Sweden, there was an article this week, I think, on Clean Technica. Sweden's over 50% electric cars for new car sales.
The Jeep Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer are going electric too, but with a twist, as they'll adopt the same big battery engine as generator approach as the Ram Charger. That's the pickup truck that instead of having the plug-in hybrids will just switch from an EV to a gas engine, but this is switching from an EV to a generator that just generates the electricity, and you still have that feel of the EV, except with a little bit of noise in the back or whatever.
Yeah, I think the original Chevy Bolt was like that too. It always ran on the electric motor, but it just had a generator.
The first generation would come on to heat the car, so I didn't like that. But they had two generations of that. It was a pretty good car once they figured it out for the second generation. But then what they do, they discontinued it, which is a shame, perhaps. It's had good range. It had ample range too. It was one of the few vehicles at the time. Some of them were like, Toyota had one that was like 12 miles of range or something. What's that going to do for you? You're not going to plug it in. This is from the International Energy Agency. As a result of the Russian-caused global energy crisis, consumers worldwide are paying 20% more on average for energy in 2022 than in previous years. So everything went up quite a bit, especially in Europe.
Yeah, so a spike in 2022, but hopefully it's come down since then with the, speeding up of the deployment of renewables.
Korea plans to generate 70% of its power from clean, carbon-free sources by 2038. That's viz 40% today, approximately. The plans include 4 more nuclear power plants, and tripling of its solar and wind generation to 72 gigawatts by 2038, which 72 gigawatts of renewables is about 20 gigawatts of nuclear, the article says. A new proposed hydrogen highway in Alberta, Canada. The oil capital of Canada is building a hydrogen highway. Why? Why do you think they're doing that? Because they want to make hydrogen with natural gas, which is called blue hydrogen.
Of course they do. It's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea. It's the stupidest idea ever. And it's I can't imagine, sometimes we come across things that are stupid, that are a waste of taxpayer money. This is no doubt, absolutely a complete waste of money. There's 100%. I would bet my left 6 fingers on it. It's ridiculous. Sorry. And finally this week, something positive. A coal share in India, the coal share in India's installed power capacity has dropped below 50%. India, huge country, billion people, a lot of people coming out of poverty, using electricity, hard to keep up, much like China has been doing recently. So there's a lot of coal. They've got coal. They burn a lot of coal, a lot of air pollution. It's not all from coal, but it's a problem. So coal share is dropped below 50%. And I think that is the first time for a long, long time. Yeah, and this is in the first quarter of 2024, and this is well ahead of the government's target to establish 50% cumulative power generation capacity from non-fossil fuel-based sources by 2030. So right now, India stepping up. We hear about China coming up ahead of their targets. India is doing it too, which is really good to see. This is from PV Magazine. India added a record of 13.6 megawatts of power generation capacity in the January to March period of this year of renewables. And with renewable energy contributing, that's the total power capacity that they added, which is quite a bit. They're always adding a lot, but 71% of that was renewables. So therefore, when you add power of that much share, then the share of fossil fuels drops. So coal share of the total power capacity dropped below 50% for the first time since the 1960s. So yay. This is well ahead of the government's target by 2030. And that is a good news story, Brian.
Yeah, that's a great place to stop the show. That's it for this week. You can contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and around social media, Clean Energy Pod. And you can find videos on TikTok and YouTube, including special content not featured on the podcast.
You can donate to the show. Somebody did this week. Thank you for donating. We appreciate it when donations come in via our PayPal link there in your show notes. The store is there as well if you'd like to buy a t-shirt and support the brand of our show by spreading the news. Review us on Apple or wherever you're listening to the show. That helps us too. Sometimes we get, it's very important to have that for some reason, but it is. If you're doing the show, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, and I know you are, some of you, smash the like and subscribe button, or make a comment, or argue with somebody in the comments. That always helps our algorithm too. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. We are taking next week off, so manage without us. We'll be back. Trust me, we'll be here.
Yeah, I'm off on a fun road trip to Columbus, Indiana. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
And I'm going to do the dishes. So we're way behind on our dishes. See you in 2 weeks.
See ya.